The diamond deception, the package arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Olivia Parker signed for it with one hand, while the other rested protectively over her 6-month pregnant belly. She hadn't ordered anything, but Thomas was always surprising her with gifts. At least he used to, before his late nights at the office began stretching longer and his kisses grew shorter. She placed the slim box on the marble counter of their penthouse kitchen. The return address read, Harrington Jewelers, one of the most prestigious jewelry stores in Manhattan. Olivia smiled, thinking perhaps Thomas had remembered their anniversary after all. But when she opened it, confusion replaced her momentary joy. Inside was a receipt for an emerald bracelet worth $30,000, but no bracelet. The receipt indicated the purchase had been made yesterday and was marked to be picked up by purchaser. At the bottom, in elegant handwriting, was a note. As requested, the engraving Forever Victoria has been added. Victoria. The name hit Olivia like a physical blow. She steadied herself against the counter, breathing deeply as the baby kicked inside her, seemingly responding to her sudden distress. Who is Victoria? She whispered to the empty apartment. Olivia had suspected Thomas's infidelity for months. The late meetings, the weekend business trips, the mysterious phone calls he took in another room. But suspicion was different from confirmation, and the receipt in her trembling hands was undeniable evidence. She carefully replaced the receipt in its envelope and tucked it into her purse. Thomas wouldn't be home until late, another business dinner he'd explained that morning. Now she wondered who he was really dining with. Instead of crumbling, Olivia felt a surprising calm descend over her. Perhaps it was maternal instinct, a determination to protect her unborn child that overrode her personal devastation. Whatever it was, it gave her clarity. She needed more information before confronting Thomas. The next morning, after Thomas left for work with a distracted kiss on her cheek, Olivia called an old college friend, Rebecca, who now worked as a private investigator. I need discretion. Becca, Olivia explained after sharing her discovery. I need to know everything, who she is, how long it's been going on, and if there's more I don't know about. I'll be careful, Rebecca promised. But Liv, are you sure about this? Sometimes knowing everything hurts more. I'm having his child, Olivia replied, her voice steady. I need to know exactly what kind of man the father of my baby is. Over the next 2 weeks, Olivia maintained a flawless performance of the doting wife. She prepared Thomas's favorite meals, didn't question his late returns, and smiled through his increasingly transparent lies. Meanwhile, Rebecca delivered regular updates. Victoria Chambers was a 26-year-old gallery curator, whom Thomas had met at a business function 6 months ago, right around the time Olivia had announced her pregnancy. They met 3 times a week at an upscale hotel downtown. The affair had been going on for 5 months. There's something else, Rebecca said during their latest meeting in a quiet cafe far from Olivia's usual haunts. Thomas has been moving money between accounts. Large sums, Olivia frowned. What do you mean? I'm not sure yet, but it looks like he might be hiding assets. I have a contact in financial forensics who can look deeper if you want. Do it, Olivia said without hesitation. That evening, as Thomas showered, Olivia checked his phone. She knew his password. It was their anniversary date, which struck her as both ironic and insulting now. There were dozens of messages from VC with intimate details that made her stomach turn. The latest message read, Can't wait to wear my beautiful bracelet tomorrow night. You always know exactly what I want. Tomorrow night. Thomas had told her he had an important client dinner. Olivia replaced the phone exactly as she'd found it and returned to their bed. When Thomas emerged from the bathroom and slipped under the covers beside her, she pretended to be asleep. Her mind, however, was racing. She wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. She was becoming something else, a woman with a plan. Thomas Parker had built his real estate empire through cunning and strategic thinking. Now Olivia would use those same skills against him. Two can play this game, she whispered to herself after Thomas's breathing deepened into sleep. She placed a protective hand over her swollen belly. And I'm playing for two now. The silent storm. Olivia sipped her decaffeinated tea as she watched the city lights flicker through the penthouse windows. The baby gave a gentle kick as if reminding her of their shared mission. Thomas had called an hour ago with the same tired excuse. Another late meeting, another important deal that couldn't wait. Take care of yourself and Junior, he'd said with practiced concern. I'll try not to wake you when I get home. Olivia had responded with the sweet understanding that had become her best disguise. But as soon as the call ended, she'd returned to reviewing the files Rebecca had delivered earlier that day. The financial information was damning. Thomas's company, Parker Developments, had been falsifying environmental impact reports on their latest luxury high-rise. The building, ironically named the Integrity, stood on land that had previously housed a chemical plant. Instead of performing the proper remediation, Thomas had bribed officials and doctored test results. Olivia's laptop pinged with an incoming email from Daniel Harrison, the investigative journalist she'd anonymously contacted last week. His message was brief but satisfying. Information verified. Multiple sources confirm. Ready when you are. Another key piece falling into place. Olivia closed the laptop and moved to the hidden safe behind their wedding portrait, a hiding spot Thomas thought only he knew about. Inside were copies of every incriminating document she'd collected, including records of offshore accounts where Thomas had been funneling company money, their money. Her phone vibrated with a text from Rebecca. They're at Bordeaux restaurant. Reservation until 10 p.m. Bordeaux was Thomas's favorite restaurant where he'd proposed to Olivia 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on her. She opened the drawer of her bedside table and removed the small jewelry box she'd hidden there. Inside was the emerald bracelet, the one intended for Victoria. Olivia had gone to Harrington Jewelers the day after discovering the receipt, wearing a disguise of dark sunglasses and a blonde wig borrowed from Rebecca. I'm Mrs. Parker, she had told the jeweler confidently. My husband asked me to pick up a bracelet. The elderly jeweler had hesitated only briefly before retrieving the exquisite piece. The emeralds gleamed against white gold with the damning inscription hidden on the inside. Now Olivia fastened it around her wrist, admiring how it caught the light. It would serve a greater purpose than adorning Victoria's arm. It would become evidence in the court of public opinion. The following morning, Thomas announced that the annual Parker Foundation Charity Gala would take place in 2 weeks. It's short notice, he explained over breakfast, not quite meeting her eyes. But we need to finalize some partnerships before the end of the quarter. Of course, Olivia replied, pouring him more coffee. I'll make sure everything is perfect. Thomas looked relieved. I've asked Monica to help with the arrangements, he added, referring to his assistant. She'll coordinate with the event planners so you won't have to stress in your condition. How thoughtful, Olivia said, wondering if Monica knew about Victoria. Probably not. Thomas was too careful to let his professional and personal indiscretions overlap. That afternoon, Olivia met with Lawrence Bennett, Thomas's chief competitor and the person he most despised in the industry. I appreciate you meeting with me. Mr. Bennett, Olivia said as they sat in his minimalist office overlooking Central Park. Bennett studied her with shrewd eyes. I'll admit I was curious. It's not every day that the wife of my biggest rival requests a private meeting. I believe we can help each other, Olivia replied, sliding a folder across his desk. This contains proof that the Integrity was built on contaminated land. The environmental reports were falsified. Bennett's expression remained neutral as he reviewed the documents, but his eyes widened slightly at certain pages. This is quite serious. But why come to me? Because you're known for ethical development practices, Olivia said. And because I want Thomas to lose everything to someone he truly hates. A small smile played at Bennett's lips. And what do you get out of this, Mrs. Parker? Justice, Olivia replied simply, and a safe future for my child. By the time she left Bennett's office, they had an understanding. In return for her information, Bennett would offer Olivia a position on his company's board of directors after the dust settled, a position that would secure her financial independence. The day of the gala arrived with perfect timing. Thomas had been especially attentive that week, perhaps sensing something amiss or simply covering his tracks. He'd even brought home flowers and prenatal vitamins. As Olivia dressed for the event in a stunning emerald gown specially designed to accommodate her pregnancy, she felt strangely calm. Her hair was elegantly styled, her makeup flawless. The emerald bracelet gleamed on her wrist, the final piece of her carefully constructed plan. You look beautiful, Thomas said when she emerged from their bedroom. His eyes darted momentarily to the bracelet, but he quickly masked his recognition. Thank you, Olivia replied with a genuine smile. For the first time in months, she felt empowered rather than betrayed. Shall we go? We wouldn't want to keep our The perfect revenge. The grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of Manhattan's elite. Olivia stood beside Thomas as they greeted guests, his hand possessively at her waist, her emerald bracelet glinting with every movement. "You've outdone yourself," whispered Diane Miller, one of their oldest friends. Her eyes drifted to Olivia's wrist. "That bracelet is stunning." "Thank you," Olivia replied with a serene smile. "It was a gift. Very special." Thomas's fingers tightened slightly at her waist, but his social mask remained fixed. The successful developer, the charitable donor, the devoted husband expecting his first child. As they circulated, Olivia noted every person essential to her plan. Lawrence Bennett had arrived, along with 2 reporters from major business publications. Rebecca stood by the bar, posing as a photographer's assistant. And at the corner table, exactly where Olivia had requested she be seated, sat Victoria Chambers, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Thomas hadn't seen her yet. He was too busy charming potential investors, unaware that tonight would be his last as New York real estate royalty. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the MC, "please take your seats. Dinner will be served shortly, after which Mr. Thomas Parker will say a few words about tonight's charitable cause." Olivia and Thomas made their way to the head table. As they passed Victoria's table, Thomas faltered almost imperceptibly. Olivia felt his momentary tension, saw his quick glance of warning toward Victoria, who looked down at her plate. "Everything all right, darling?" Olivia asked innocently. "Perfect," Thomas replied, recovering quickly. Dinner proceeded according to plan. Thomas was distracted, his eyes occasionally darting to Victoria's table. Victoria looked increasingly uncomfortable, especially when she noticed the bracelet on Olivia's wrist. Her face paled and she whispered something to her companion. After dessert was served, the MC introduced Thomas, who rose to polite applause. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Thomas began, his practice charm on full display. "The Parker Foundation is committed to building a better future for our city." As he continued his rehearsed speech, Olivia nodded subtly to Rebecca, who approached Victoria's table and whispered in her ear. Victoria's expression transformed from confusion to horror as she looked toward Olivia. Thomas was concluding his remarks. "And with your continued support, we can ensure that integrity remains the cornerstone of our community." "Speaking of integrity," Olivia said clearly as she rose from her seat, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "I believe there's something else our guests should know." Thomas turned to her, confusion and warning battling in his expression. "Olivia, what are you—" "This bracelet," she continued, holding up her wrist for all to see, "was purchased by my husband last month. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? Perhaps Victoria would like to read the inscription." All eyes turned to Victoria, who looked ready to flee. "For those who can't see," Olivia continued, "it reads forever. Victoria. An interesting choice for a man whose wife of 3 years is carrying his child." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Thomas's face drained of color. "Olivia," he hissed, "this isn't the place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the place," she interrupted smoothly. "Where better to discuss integrity than at a charity gala hosted by Parker Developments, the same company that built the integrity on contaminated land and falsified environmental reports." At this, Lawrence Bennett stood up. "I can confirm these allegations. My company has conducted independent testing that proves the land was never properly remediated." The room erupted in murmurs. One of the reporters was already typing furiously on his phone. "That's not all," Olivia continued, her voice steady. "Copies of offshore account statements showing funds, diverted from company accounts, have been provided to the SEC. I believe their representatives are here tonight as, well." 2 serious-looking individuals in dark suits stood up from a corner table, confirming her words. Thomas lunged for the microphone. "This is preposterous. My wife is clearly emotional due to her pregnancy." "Your wife," Olivia said, her voice like ice, "has spent the last month gathering evidence while you were busy with your mistress and your fraud. Your wife has secured her future and that of your child, the child you apparently considered an inconvenience once you found a younger replacement." She turned to address the stunned crowd. "I apologize for disrupting this evening. The charitable foundation is legitimate, and your donations will reach their intended recipients. I've made certain of that at least." Thomas grabbed her arm. You'll regret this, he whispered furiously. You're nothing without me. Olivia removed his hand firmly. No, Thomas. You're nothing without your reputation, and that's gone now. As if on cue, Bennett approached. Mrs. Parker, your car is waiting whenever you're ready. Thomas watched in disbelief as his rival offered his arm to his wife. You can't leave with him. I'm not leaving with him, Olivia corrected. I'm leaving you. There's a difference. Oh, and you should know that Mr. Bennett has offered me a position on his board. It seems my eye for detail and commitment to integrity are valuable assets. As she walked away on Bennett's arm, flashbulbs erupted around them. Tomorrow's headlines were being written before her eyes. Outside, Rebecca waited with a car. Everything went as planned, she confirmed as Olivia settled into the back seat. The SEC agents took him aside for questioning, and the reporters are having a field day. Olivia removed the emerald bracelet and placed it in her purse. It had served its purpose. Where to now? Rebecca asked. Olivia looked out at the glittering city. For the first time in months, she felt free. To my new apartment, the one Thomas doesn't know about. As the car pulled away from the curb, Olivia felt her baby kick energetically. Yes, little one, she whispered, placing a protective hand over her belly. We're going home. Our home. Behind them, Thomas Parker's carefully constructed world continued to crumble, piece by precious piece, like a chandelier falling in elegant, destructive slow motion. Some betrayals demanded nothing less than a perfect revenge, and Olivia Parker had delivered exactly that. New beginnings. 3 months had passed since the night of the charity gala. The story of Thomas Parker's downfall had dominated business news for weeks, with headlines like Real Estate Mogul's Empire Crumbles. Amid fraud allegations and Parker's double deception, business fraud and marital betrayal exposed. Olivia sat in her new corner office at Bennett Development Group, reviewing architectural plans for their latest project, an affordable housing complex built to the highest environmental standards. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was now helping to create the very type of ethical development that Thomas had always mocked as unprofitable bleeding heart nonsense. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Lawrence Bennett stood in the doorway, his usually stern expression softened with something resembling respect. The board loved your presentation yesterday, he said, entering and taking a seat across from her desk. Your ideas for community integration are exactly what this project needed. Thank you, Olivia replied, unconsciously resting a hand on her now prominent 9-month belly. I believe developments should enhance communities, not exploit them. Bennett nodded, his eyes dropping briefly to her stomach. How much longer? 2 weeks, according to my doctor, Olivia said with a small smile, though he seems eager to make an early appearance. Have you decided on a name yet? James, Olivia answered without hesitation, after my father, not Thomas Jr., as her ex-husband had insisted throughout her pregnancy. That particular battle had been one of the easier victories in their ongoing divorce proceedings. Thomas was fighting tooth and nail for every asset, but with the SEC investigation and multiple civil lawsuits pending against him, his leverage diminished daily. You should start your maternity leave, Bennett suggested. The project is well underway and your team is more than capable. Olivia shook her head. I'll work until the day he arrives. Idle hands aren't good for me right now. Bennett seemed to understand. Work had become Olivia's sanctuary, a place where her competence was valued and her judgment trusted, the exact opposite of her marriage. After Bennett left, Olivia checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Rebecca and a text. Call me ASAP, Thomas News. Olivia's heart raced as she dialed her friend. Rebecca answered immediately. What's happened? Olivia asked, bracing herself. Thomas was arrested this morning, Rebecca said without preamble. The SEC investigation uncovered evidence of money laundering. It's federal charges, Liv. Olivia sank back in her chair, a complex wave of emotions washing over her. Despite everything, there was no joy in hearing that the father of her child might go to prison. There's more, Rebecca continued. Victoria came forward as a witness against him. Apparently, he'd involved her in some of his schemes, had her acting as a courier for cash deposits. She turned on him. Olivia couldn't help feeling a twinge of satisfaction at that. Self-preservation, Rebecca explained. She claims she didn't know what she was doing was illegal. Whether that's true or not, she's cooperating fully now. After ending the call, Olivia stood and walked to the window of her office, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. The city seemed different now, full of possibility rather than threat. Her revenge had been complete, but it had full circle. Sunlight streamed through the nursery window, casting golden patterns across the sleeping face of 6-month-old James. Olivia stood in the doorway, marveling at the perfect tiny human she had created. His eyelashes cast delicate shadows on his chubby cheeks, his chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The past months had been a whirlwind of adjustment, sleepless nights, the learning curve of motherhood, and the continued fallout from Thomas's criminal case. But looking at her son now, Olivia knew every challenge had been worth it. Her phone vibrated silently in her pocket. It was Bennett. "The jury reached a verdict," he said without preamble when she answered. "Guilty on all counts. The judge is expected to hand down a substantial sentence. The prosecution is asking for 15 years minimum." Olivia exhaled slowly, processing the information. "Thank you for letting me know." After ending the call, she returned her attention to James, who was beginning to stir. His eyes opened, the same deep brown as her own, thankfully showing no trace of his father. "Good morning, sunshine," she cooed, lifting him from the crib. He rewarded her with a toothless grin that melted her heart. Later that morning, as Olivia prepared to leave for a half-day at the office, her new work-life balance allowing her to be home with James most afternoons, her doorman called up. "Mrs. Parker, there's a Mrs. Eleanor Parker here to see you. She says she's your former mother-in-law." Olivia froze. She hadn't seen Thomas's mother since before the gala. Eleanor had always been kind to her, seemingly unaware of her son's true nature, or perhaps in denial about it. "Send her up, please," Olivia decided after a moment's hesitation. Eleanor Parker arrived looking every bit the society matron she was, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, her silver hair styled perfectly. But her eyes betrayed exhaustion and grief. "Olivia," she said softly, "thank you for seeing me." "Of course, Eleanor. Please come in." The older woman entered, her eyes immediately drawn to James, who was contentedly playing in his bouncer. "Is that—" Eleanor's voice caught. "My grandson?" Olivia nodded. "Would you like to meet him?" Eleanor approached tentatively, as if afraid James might disappear if she moved too quickly. "He's beautiful," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "He has your coloring. Would you like to hold him?" Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as Olivia transferred James into her arms. The baby regarded his grandmother with curious eyes before breaking into another smile. "He's quite the charmer," Olivia remarked. "Unlike his father, I hope," Eleanor said with unexpected sharpness. At Olivia's surprised look, she sighed. "I heard the verdict this morning. I've been following the case closely, though I couldn't bring myself to attend the trial." She settled into an armchair, still cradling James. "I came here today because I owe you an apology, Olivia. I raised a son who believed he could take whatever he wanted without consequences, who believed that rules didn't apply to him." "Eleanor, you don't have to—" "I do," the older woman insisted. "I was willfully blind to Thomas's flaws for far too long. I made excuses for his behavior since he was a child. His father and I gave him everything except accountability." Olivia sat across from her, seeing the genuine remorse in Eleanor's face. "We all missed signs with Thomas. He was exceptionally good at presenting exactly what people wanted to see." Eleanor nodded sadly. "The thing is, I wasn't completely surprised by what came out at that gala. Disappointed, heartbroken, yes, but not surprised. Deep down, I always knew Thomas was capable of such deception." She looked down at James, who had fallen asleep in her arms. "I'd like to be part of his life if you'll allow it. Not because he's Thomas's son, but because he's yours. You were always too good for my son, Olivia. I knew that from the first time I met you." Olivia studied Eleanor's face, seeing sincerity there. Despite everything, she had always liked her mother-in-law, who had treated her with kindness when Thomas's attention had waned. "James should know his grandmother," Olivia said finally. "You're welcome to visit any time." Relief flooded Eleanor's expression. "Thank you. I promise I won't disappoint either of you." After Eleanor left, promising to return the following week, Olivia stood at her apartment window, James sleeping against her shoulder. Below, the city hummed with activity, people rushing to and from work, living their lives, facing their own private battles. A year ago, she had been a betrayed wife plotting revenge against a husband who had humiliated her. Now, she was a successful businesswoman, A mother, a woman who had reclaimed her power and rebuilt her life on her own terms. The emerald bracelet that had been instrumental in her revenge was long gone, donated to a women's shelter charity auction where it had fetched a substantial sum. Olivia had found it fitting that the symbol of Thomas's betrayal would ultimately help other women escape destructive relationships. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Dinner tonight? We're celebrating the verdict with champagne. And I have news." Olivia smiled, typing back her acceptance. Her circle of support had grown stronger through adversity. Rebecca, Bennett, even Eleanor in her own way. People who valued her for herself, not as an accessory to someone else's life. As she gazed down at James's sleeping face, Olivia felt a profound sense of peace. The path of revenge had been necessary, not just for justice but for her own liberation. It had led her here to this moment of perfect contentment, where the future stretched before her full of promise rather than betrayal. "We made it," she whispered to her son, placing a gentle kiss on his forehead. Outside, spring was giving way to summer, the seasons changing just as her life had transformed. Painful endings becoming beautiful beginnings, the cycle of renewal continuing its perfect, endless dance.